information.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm Steinar, and I've worked for OAuth, but I've been hired at the Norwegian Health Network since 2015. I usually don't look as happy and cool as I do in the picture, but usually I'm more pale and much more concentrated than I look there. So I also have a distant love relationship with some of the working groups. I follow FAPI, HEART, and Identity Assurance Working Group, and I try to contribute, although I often don't succeed as much as I would like to. So the case I want to talk to you about today is sharing health information between legal entities in Norway. Well, in Norway, this means that only health personnel is allowed, and they have to have a valid reason before being given access to the health information. So it's quite tricky. Before we dive in, I would like to give you some background information about Norway. We are not the capital of Sweden. We are around 5.3 million inhabitants, which is comparable to Washington, D.C., St. Petersburg, Barcelona, or something like that. So you understand that it's not a big country, but we do have a lot of money from oil, gas, and fish. But the oil money goes in the piggy bank, so that's sort of out of bounds for us. The health sector is quite interesting in Norway. All healthcare is free. And we have services that are divided into two. We have specialist healthcare services, and we have the primary healthcare services, all of which are public. In addition, we have national services where we provide digital services for prescriptions. We have a centralized patient registry, and we have a lot of other national services, which we provide to our healthcare services. So I just love this quote. It's from supposedly from Ernest Hemingway. The best way to find out if you can trust somebody is to trust them. Well, when you're sharing health information, and I guess a lot of other information as well, that's probably not the case. So as I said, we were hired by Norwegian Health Network in 2015 to work on a solution to reduce the amount of repeated logins for health personnel. That was a problem because it took time and of course concentration. So our initial thought was that health personnel, they have to be taught some kind of fair authentication at medical school or whatever. But it turned out that externalized identity wasn't a big thing in health sector yet. So to make a long story short, we decided on OpenID Connect and OAuth in 2016. The pros for us was, most importantly, we anticipated an increase of use of APIs to share health information. So the way that OIDC bound the user session, which allowed us to put authentication information in the access tokens, was really tempting, and it sort of solved a lot of the basic problems. In addition to that, it was modern technology. We had expert advice available. The protocols and specifications, they had great extensibility. Good developer focus, and most of all, was fun to work with for us anyway. So the cons was that, well, there weren't any APIs actually in the health sector, or at least very few. We had low semantical interoperability. We had no common language. There wasn't any trust model to speak of, at least not for that kind of systems, those kind of systems. And there was a lot of fuzziness concerning the technology in the sector. What that means is that we didn't actually know how the systems looked and how they behaved. Good choice. It turned out to be an industry standard, and it has helped us solve a lot of the questions. I guess basically I could sort of wrapped up my speech today, here, my talk today, but I'll show you what we've been through and what we're working on right now. That was my idea anyway. So basically, we established an identity federation, which has been in production since 2018. It consists of some EID or ID providers. We use some authoritative registers and some other national services that provide us with the information that is useful when you want to grant access to users. So we also are subject to the EU legislation, although we're not a part of it. We're not members, but we seem to sort of adopt the legislation, the regulations earlier than a lot of the EU countries, actually. So in Norway, we have something called NCOM, which approves EID solutions and trust services. So this is sort of the basis for our federation. And then we sort of hit a wall. Sharing data through APIs, well, it means new value chains. That's sort of obvious, but it also means new security measures, because up until 2013, actually sharing health information between legal boundaries was forbidden. So what happened was that all of these actors were building these digital fortresses, and from 2013 afterwards, it wasn't allowed. All the actors had to share the health information, so you couldn't cut the internet cord anymore. You had to make it available somehow. So a shift, I guess, to traceability compared to sort of these digital fortresses. All this means that you have to be really, really certain about the end user's identity, and you also have to be very certain about the grants that you give them. So what this sort of led to was a need to separate the snot from the mustache. And the reason we had to do this, or focus on sort of identifying the particular parts of our needs, is that it's really difficult. I mean, identity domain is deliciously difficult and abstract, but health, it adds other aspects and new complexity. And suddenly it starts getting really hard to get an overview, and that's not so delicious. So we also notice that it's easy to make bad decisions. For instance, using the protocols for things they shouldn't be used. And we had to find a way to handle this complexity. So our first step was trying to understand the requirements. And there are four sort of main drivers for our requirements. We have the patient security, which is all about giving the patients the right treatment at the right time. But we also have to talk to each other across legal borders, across systems. So interoperability is a big thing. In addition, we have all the laws. We have regulations from EU. We have the GDPR. We have the specific health legislation, which is a large number of laws and amendments. And finally, we have the cybersecurity space, which is, health is a valued target. So we need to sort of separate these drivers from each other so they don't intermingle, which has turned out to be quite a difficult job. We've grown fond of the EIF, the European Interoperability Framework. It helps us sort of put things where they ought to be. So by looking at EIF, you have sort of these different areas or dimensions of interoperability. And for us, it has really helped. So we're able to sort of focus on the technical stuff. We're sort of able to sort of separate out the legal stuff. and the semantical and organizational stuff, and we can put effort into the areas where we need it the most. So from our starting point, well, you know, this is where we started. In Norwegian, we use the term woolly to describe something that's fuzzy. So this is where we started. Everything was sort of woolly. And this is where we are today. It's still a lot of wool and fuzziness, but it's a lot better than it was. When it comes to security, I think, you know, one of the problems or the issues with the snot separating process was to find models that could you know, let us have other people understand what we were talking about, because we were sort of like a special breed at the time we started working on this. So there's a tendency to solely point to strong authentication, for instance, you know, as a basis for access. But in reality, there's a lot more to security than the you know, the pure identity part of it. So we had a look at Abraham Maslow's motivational theory as sort of like a basis for us as well. Maslow talks about you know, humans having some needs fulfilled in order to reach self-fulfillment. So we tried to apply the same logic to describe a layering of our needs in order to successfully authorize access to health information. So we tried. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I'm having the right slides shown at the moment. Yes, I do. Okay, so we started trying to build a model, and at the basis of that model is a trust framework. I see I've misspelled it. I hope you forgive me. The trust framework would you know, usually consist of agreements, laws and regulations, organizational interoperability, etc., etc. So this is a simplified model. Our model that we use is a lot more detailed, but I just wanted to show you the basic idea that we've used. So for us, it starts here. It's security and quality at the OpenID provider or the authorization server. So that means everything, you know, from the operational point of view, and but also you know, the routines and processes, etc. The next comes the standardized protocols, you know, the secure use, you know, highly secured use of the protocols by using profiles and best current practices. And the idea behind Maslow's model is that if you remove one of these layers, the layers on top will sort of fall down. It's not, you know, you need these in order to fulfill the next level. So this is the responsibility of the national OpenID Connect provider. But also you need to have good security and high quality in the applications and APIs, which is the responsibility of the health institutions and the API owners. You need to have known identity providers. You need to know that the authentication is done in a good way, and that the identities are handled correctly. For this, we point to the trust providers, and we need strong authentication, not only of the users, but also of the, you know, organizations and the clients, etc. So that's the part where you start using these providers, that the trust providers, the solutions that they give us. And when you sort of fulfill all these needs, then you at the end, you're able to provide access or grant access to the end user or a machine, if that's the case. So this is obviously from the viewpoint of the owner of the health information. So in addition, it's you know, I talked a little bit about the legislation, but legislation again points to the fact that all the owners of the APIs that expose health information must evaluate the risk before they actually expose the information. So the API owners, they decide the security mechanisms based on risk assessments. And I see there's a lot of misspelling here. I'm really sorry about that. So you know, there are several possible mechanisms. OIDC and OAuth are most suitable. And given that we actually have an AS that we provide to the sector, then it's you know, the easiest solution for everyone. And given that we are able to sort of fulfill the requirements for security and trust, then it's an easy choice. So this is what it actually looks like from a really simplified view. So we have Helsida, which is our national federation gateway for the health sector. And we have some identity providers, which could be a national provider, it could be some commercial provider, or it could be a health institution. And the goal here is to sort of consume data from the FHIR API, or actually, when it comes to the legal point of view, it's to provide access to the health personnel in need of this information when he's treating a patient. That's sort of the driving need here. But what we found was that a grant seldom comes alone. It's not enough to operate with you know, simple scopes. A lot of the times the grants are have this context that's special, and it could be, you know, one time only. It could be, you know, there's several sort of requirements that are that need to be fulfilled. So what is needed to expose health information? You know, that's a fair question. So I mean, who's the end user? Yeah, that's sort of obvious. Who owns the system? Well, you know, when it comes to privacy and health information, it's actually the organizations that own the data. They're the data responsible. So, did I grant access to the application? Have I done that? Or when was it granted? Is the grant still valid? Which health institution is using the system? What kind of system is this? Is it an EHR system? Is it an accounting system? Is it, you know, could be anything. And it's the end user health personnel. That's probably a really relevant question. The point is that from the beginning, you know, the API doesn't know a thing about the client. So we need to provide a lot of information, contextual information about the client in order for the API to give access. So this is sort of how our worldview is. So we, that is Helsida, we establish a trust relationship with the client on behalf of the API. And we add contextual information about the end user, which, as I showed you a couple of slides ago, we gather some information from different authoritative registries. And from the identity provider. And this works as long as the API trusts us. So what we need in addition, as I said, I showed you, we need more contextual information that's sort of coupled to the grant. Well, you know, the API needs to know more about the user than the OP can aggregate. So well, the client knows. The client, in our case, always knows more about the user than we do. And this is sort of where we're at right now. The OP can leverage our trust between us and the client and enable a sort of trusted relationship, which we can show in the access tokens. We put in the access tokens and let the API do the authorization on its side based on the information that we provide. So the way we do this is we bundle some information in the authorization request. This is structured in a way that's specified in the new specification called rich authorization requests. But we also try to leverage some other mechanisms. So right now we're using something called request objects, which makes us able to have good integrity protection to prevent the attributes from being tampered with. But in the coming months, we hope that we also are able to use the PAR, the pushed authorization requests. So one of the things we sort of figured out quite early was that we're not capable of doing a thorough and good enough security analysis of these protocols. So we were quite happy to learn that there were working groups and people at the working groups who are focused on these things, the details of the protocols and finding weaknesses and mitigations. So we quite early we started looking at the financial grade APIs, and after a while we also have looked at the security current practices. So basically, that's sort of the basis for our security model, the technical security model for using the protocols. So the advantage this gives us, as I told you, we're a small country. We don't have a lot of resources, and we're totally dependent on, libraries, client libraries, providers, etc., being developed by someone else. And the advantage of these international standards, well, they're quite easy to understand. It's research from Kuster's group and others. We have analysis by domain experts. We get experience from the industry, and the best current practices document. It provides a well-known threat and attacker model, which we can use when we do our risk assessment. Of course, it's sort of like a two-edged sword. It makes it possible to exploit the weaknesses, but it also makes it possible to find mitigations. And all of this is combined, makes it easy for us to choose a profile that the FAPI group and the OAuth working group has come up with. So we use relevant parts of the FAPI profile and the BCP. Of course, FAPI is financial grade. We're looking forward to the 2.0 version because it's more or less focused on the financial side. But right now we're focused on strong client authentication. As I told you, we use rich authorization requests. We're looking forward to using pushed authorization requests. And we're really into the finding solutions for sender constraint tokens. If someone could standardize the other way around as well, the audience constraint tokens, well, that would also be a good idea and something we would like. So in the description, I said that we would talk about some challenges we've seen. Well, in complex environments, mutual TLS is not always feasible. That's one of the big things for us. It could be security zones within security zones. It's multi-point hops. It's quite challenging. We have complex systems, large EHR systems, and it's not always obvious what a client is. We also have old systems, which is challenging. Some of them might not even have libraries available. So when it comes to work we're particularly interested in at the moment, FAPI is of course really interesting. Identity assurance and EKYC is obviously also very interesting for us. Pushed authorization requests, rich authorization requests, the OpenID Connect Federation, and of course also the ongoing work with NAP, the NAP protocol. I'm not sure if I have enough time, but I will try to show you some cases. So this is the simple case for us. We have a municipality or several municipalities with some health system, which has to consume some national API. Well, you know, that case is quite easy. The system, it tells us a lot about, you know, the client tells us a lot about who the owner is. We get some contextual information about the user, which we use for the grant. We get the access token, and the access token is presented to the API. In this case, an instance of an EHR is one client, and Helsida knows the client and the end user, and the client provides claims about the user context through RAR. So the more complex case is the large systems or the platforms, which are, in our case, is considered logical system. The platform is one common client. Helsida always knows the user because we use the OpenID Connect. But we have personnel from more than 1,000 businesses, and the platform tells the OP which business the user works for through RAR. I think I'm out of time, so I'll just jump across this. This is the suggested pattern, which for us is quite difficult to sort of digest, but it's interesting. Perhaps also a topic for a session talk on Thursday or Friday. So thank you very much for your attention. Yeah, I'm done. Thanks.